Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cosmic Conversations. My name is Aman Wadhwa. I'm part of Caylent's marketing team, and I will be your host. On this podcast, we will bring on friends from Caylent and across the tech industry to talk about their struggles and triumphs, the lessons they've learned, and the insights they've gained along the way. Through these conversations, we hope you will gain inspiration and practical tips to help you succeed in your own careers and personal life. In each episode, we dive deep into the personal and professional journeys of our guests. So whether you're interested in the cloud native industry or are just looking for some inspiration, we invite you to tune in to hear our guests' stories and discover how you too can achieve your goals and reach for the stars. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce our very first guest, Ginger Siedschlag, who is Caylent's Chief Operating Officer and has been with the company for just shy of 2 years. In her role as COO, Ginger leads the company's operations, ensuring that business functions from engineering to talent and customer solutions operate smoothly and to their full potential. Ginger's career trajectory is an inspiring story of resilience and determination. She had originally wanted to become a wildlife biologist, but life had other plans, and she was pulled into the world of technology after a history teacher suggested she take a computer programming class. Despite dropping out of college due to uncontrollable circumstances, Ginger worked extremely hard to get a mentorship and an entry position at a tech company while she was already working 2 jobs, on a help desk and in analytics reporting. Her incredible work ethic and foresightedness have brought her tremendous success in tech, from leading teams of engineers and developers across world-class organizations to becoming a founding partner at a software development firm. To all of us that know her or have had the opportunity to work with her, Ginger exemplifies seizing opportunities, building confidence, not letting hardships determine your destiny, and having fun in the process. In meetings, you'll undoubtedly hear her crack a couple of jokes and provide a wealth of wisdom and insights along the way. And when she's not busy leading Caylent's operations, Ginger enjoys spending time with her family, traveling, and going out to experience new things with her friends. Today, Ginger will be sharing her insights and experiences with us, and inspiring us all towards a better and more equitable world. I've personally known and worked under Ginger's leadership for a few years, and her strength and bias for action have been unendingly inspiring to me. I can't think of anyone better to kick off this podcast. Ladies, gentlemen, and non-binary folks, please join me in welcoming Ginger Siedschlag.
Wow, I don't think I've ever had such a good intro.
Well, we're very excited to have you as our first guest. Thank you for agreeing to doing this despite your busy schedule.
Of course.
So to kick us off, I thought we'd start with an icebreaker. So why don't you tell us a boring fact about yourself?
Oh, I never had that question before. I love Antique Roadshow. I used to binge watch it, and it was like The Price is Right and historical learning all at the same time, and I couldn't get enough of it. I've probably seen every episode, including the British version out there.
That's amazing. I wouldn't say that's boring, though. I feel like a lot of us have watched shows that we call our guilty
You see
pleasure.
the people on there, and then myself, and it definitely, it's a little bit of a different age bracket that typically watches it, but I own it. I love it.
That's awesome. And so the good thing is we've gotten everything boring about you out of the way with that question. So now let's dive into what everyone is looking forward to listening to. So first thing we wanted to talk to you about is your daily life.
Mhm.
What are you working on nowadays? What are things that are exciting you and that you're passionate about?
I think, as you mentioned, like travel is really huge. I, got to a point where I was able to afford travel, and I started making it a part of my, regular life, making sure I went on 1 or 2 big trips a year. And then when I got custody of my niece and became a parent, that became a little bit more challenging. And then COVID happened about 6 months later, which made it like obsolete. And then, over the past, almost 2 years, travel has, become back on the menu. And she's now getting old enough too, where we can do those things. So I have a trip planned in a month, and we're a little more than a month in June. We're going to try a little bit of working and taking some time off in Europe. And I'm hoping that I can do that a bit more of mixing those two so that you're not waiting till you're retired to essentially, live and experience life. So I've been planning a bit of that trip in my spare time.
That's awesome. Where are you planning to go in Europe?
Gonna stay in the UK. That's where we're gonna kind of, try to get some things done and meet with friends, and then gonna go to France, to Paris, and then going to Croatia and Amsterdam.
Wow, that's an exciting trip.
Yeah,
Paris, Amsterdam, beautiful places.
yes, I've been to a couple of them before, but I've never been to Croatia, and I love Game of Thrones, so I'm excited to see, where they filmed it.
Oh, I believe Knight's Landing, isn't that like a
Yes,
place
yes,
based
yeah,
in Croatia?
yeah,
Oh, that's
yeah.
amazing. That'll
Or
be
is it
fun.
King's Landing? The Knight's Landing, one of those, I don't know.
King's Landing, right? That's
Yeah.
right. King's Landing. That's awesome. And what about on the professional side? What are you working on at Caylent or externally?
Yeah, recently in the thing that I'm working on that I'm most excited about is our next phase of learning and development. I'm really passionate about people, accelerating their careers and the different ways they learn and how we can help them get there, and not trying to make it too hard. It's really I've seen good and mostly bad on trying to help people identify a learning path. Like if they say they want to go to the next level of whatever that career is, you don't necessarily have a lot of specific things to do. You're like, how can I check these things off? And so we're going to try really hard to make it as easy as possible, along with the way we support people when they are onboarded or when they're on the bench and they're having professional development time to really accelerate their growth. So that's what I'm trying to spend my extra time on, and probably most passionate and excited about.
That's amazing. Do you sense that a part of your passion for this comes from the experiences you've had over your career and the growth you've
Yeah,
had?
I mean, I've been lucky to have people who have inspired me and took the time to mentor me, and most of it was on the job, along with just like scrappiness and watching and learning and stuff. And um, I think it really makes a difference on it, and not just like, oh yeah, here, go, read these things, take this course. Like really help try to guide them, because not only is it um, more engaging, it also, like, just gives a sense of, like, somebody else believes in you. You're like, "I'm not gonna just, make you read this thing. I'm actually gonna, support you." We recently launched what we are calling Caylent Navigators, which is a mentorship, support program, and it's just getting off, but I'm really excited about it because I do think there's so much of just, like, having, like, a buddy system or just other people to kind of bounce things off of, or, "How is this going?" Or, "What would you do with," what approach would you take on that? Like, it so much is about confidence, throughout the process versus just like the book reading.
Could you tell us a little bit about mentors that you've had in your past that have helped you gain that confidence and gain that courage to go beyond what you thought were your bounds? Maybe the best place to start here is to maybe go back to where your career started. Tell us about like what did you do in school? How was your experience then? What were you wanting to pursue then, and how that led towards your career in tech?
Yeah, I would almost even, like, before I went to college, the fact that somebody helped me get to college and made a big difference, because I ended up on my own since I was 15. My parents couldn't take care of me, and I had to live on my own, and essentially eh, get myself into high school, and like get a job, and try to pay for rent and do different things. And so even like the simple process of how to apply for college, or like um, knowing that what it took to get grants and things like that, like I didn't know, and there was nobody to help me. I didn't have any parents or otherwise, and I was staying with a family that was kind of helping out while I was saving money for school. And I was discouraged. Like I was like, oh God, I don't know what to do or how to do it, and I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to, like, why bother, kind of thing. And she had sat with me, filled out all the applications, and just kind of told me what, to expect, what to do. Even another family when I was in high school had encouraged me to take like a trial course at a local college. They were a professor there, and so they got me in, even though I was in high school, just so I can get experience to help prepare. And those two families that I happened to just be like renting rooms from and staying, while I was in high school, made the difference and gave me the confidence to keep going. And I then, by the time I got to college, um, I chose a college that was more like, I didn't want fraternities or extracurricular. I'm like, I wanted to focus. I'm like, I'm paying my money. I'm like, I want it to be where I'm gonna, get something out of it. And so I think that was good, except for the fact that it was, I was going to school for computer information systems. It was majority men. And so there was a lot of bias towards women and what they were capable of. I did get challenged a lot of like, did you really do this? Like, is this, are these your scores, or are you getting help? And the funny part about, I think about it later, is that I went to school for that, and I was a software developer for almost 8 years. I never had a computer. I never owned a computer. I didn't get a laptop until I was 25, I think, or no, maybe no, older. I was 27. So I did all that and went to, and I have to just like go to the lab and just like anytime I could, spare time to go do my homework or to practice and stuff, because I didn't have, I was just, really poor. Oh.
That that's incredible. That's amazing. So, what would you say when you were going through these things, when you were uh, in these positions where you had to face hardships that people don't have to face until much later in life, and you had these support systems? How would you face these things? What would you say to yourself to face these things? And how would you build your confidence within yourself and trust in the support that you had to pursue new things?
I when I was young, I don't think I necessarily had that, because there, um when you live in a certain environment where, and I've said this in a couple things, that typically a poor area where there's a lot of hardships and you're used to hardships, it's a push down culture versus a lift up. And misery loves company, and people kind of want you to feel bad about yourself and make you feel like you're not capable. So I was very used to that. And I think I, at the time, had a very timid personality. And I knew that school and education was the only way I was going to get myself out of that environment. And luckily, I did have a couple people that I looked up to, like my great aunt. She was somebody that I admired. She had, she had a lot of physical handicaps, and um, she couldn't walk for like a whole year. She was paralyzed, and they didn't know why. And they told her she could never walk or dance again. And she did. She did both. And she never married, and she lived her life very independently. And she was an artist, and she traveled the world, and she had her own career and took care of herself. And when I saw that, like, it made me feel like, hey, if she could do it, I could do it too. So even though I was still living in this environment, I looked at her of like the art of the possible. Like, I can get myself out. And she highly pushed me to get an education. And when I actually got, left by my parents, I was in Utah. I just happened to be visiting a cousin for vacation, and they didn't come back for me. And that was a big shock to the system. Like, I had known all these people, like, I grew up in this one neighborhood my whole life, and it took me a long time to get a certain set of friends because I was so shy. And then all of a sudden I was going from kind of an urban area in Los Angeles to this rural area in Utah. So not only was it like a cultural shock, but it was like I didn't have my friends, I didn't have my family. I felt like I was like in the twilight zone. Like, one minute I was there, the next minute I was over there, and I never even saw those people again. And I didn't see even my parents for like a year or two later. And that really changed my perspective on things. It made me look at myself, and I'm like, this person who is so shy and feels like, you can't do anything. I'm not going to survive in this. Like, I'm not going to be able to make it if I keep that personality. So I decided, which sounds weird, that I'm going to like make up a different personality. I'm going to be a different Ginger. So I decided I was going to be this outgoing, rebellious, just like I can do anything person because nobody knew me. Like I just was happened to be in this area and not a single person knew me. So I was like, I'm just going to be this brand new Ginger who's going to be able to accomplish anything. And I had to fake it till I make it. And but I think that time that I did that and I just like kind of willed my way through becoming this different personality, I eventually started to be that and it got me through like a lot of the hardships and everything. And I had to then kind of scale it back because I maybe got a little too rebellious or like too bold on things and realize that, holding on to some of the anger that you have of the hardships that you do encounter doesn't do you any good. Like being a victim is not going to change your life. Like the only person who can change your life is yourself. And most of the time when things happen to you, it's not because anybody's doing anything to you. Those people are having a hard time themselves and you're basically in the blast radius of whatever has gone on. And so if you take that away, if you take that personal, like somebody did something to you, it's a freedom there. And then you realize that like I can do whatever. Like nobody's stopping me but me. And that really was a big I guess milestone or a big inflection point in my life that made me really change the course of things. And then when I did that, I also noticed like so many opportunities of other people helping me, like families that were like wanted to give me, like let me stay there for a little bit or help me, get a course in college or like when I had to get in enroll myself in high school when you're a teenager and you're supposed to have your parents enroll you. Like I'd have people help me out. And so when I changed my I guess perception and my like approach, people changed their approach to me. And that really opened up a lot of opportunities for myself. And it did continued on in my career. Like every time there was some kind of different moment, and I was always ready to seize it. And I think that's been a big reason for success, like all throughout my life.
That's incredible. I can't think of a lot of us who can relate to the experiences you've been through because of the hardships you've been through, and it's deeply encouraging to see that despite all the pressure that was put on you, you've come out of that in such an amazing way, and that's very very inspiring. I wanted to ask you, having been through these hardships that came because of people that were important to you in your life, or that people that trusted, and um, how how did you feel confident in trusting these new people who were becoming your support systems, who in the end were the people that helped you go through these events that brought you to where you are today?
Yeah, I think it's so in the beginning, like I admit, like it hardened my heart. Like, I carried in this bitterness and I drove the bitterness bus for a bit, and you can get really out of control with that. And that's where it becomes really damaging to yourself and to others. And so I was lucky that like early, I think by the time I was 17 or 18, I kind of had that epiphany of like, what am I, this is not helping me. And then when I did that, I saw that there was nice people. Like everybody's not trying to hurt you. Everybody's not, mean. Yes, there's people out there. And again, I don't think there's people out there who try to be cruel, but the most of the time it's just people who are having a hard time themselves. And when you see that they're just hurting themselves and not meaning to hurt you, you can start to see all the good people around you and that there's positive intent. And I think when you do that, it allows you to see more beauty in the world than the ugliness. And I try to focus really hard on the positive intent, the the beautiful people, and realize that especially if you do that, like then you're not only receiving, you're giving because you're wanting to help and you're wanting to pay it forward because then you've actually received, I guess, love, support, those kind of things. And I did, and that's why I think now I love working in a people business because I had so many people help me along the way. And that's the most gratifying part of my job is how much I'm able to influence or help others pay it forward because I know just like those moments changed my life. Like if somebody didn't do that and didn't notice me and didn't see something in me that I didn't see myself, where would I be? So everybody always like, I always find it funny or weird or like, oh, Ginger, you're so strong. You did this. And I'm like, no, it's because somebody gave me a chance and somebody saw me and I received it. And so, like, we need to always do that. We need to always be like keeping our eyes open and looking. And I think it's really, it's different than what I guess executives or leadership does. Like, so easy to look at numbers or KPIs or results and stuff like that. And when you're in the people business, like, you really need to see who you're talking to on the other side and see what they're capable of, what they're going through that day. How we can, help come together and create joint wins. And it's the same thing with customers. That's why I think it's, great. Like, we're not just doing it on our side because we're providing a lot of services, but we're doing it for the customers. Like, if we help them, build their product or, execute whatever it is on their vision, we're making a difference in their company. And then that makes a difference in a million, a bunch of other people's lives, because all those people work at that company. And just think of like the legs it has, of the difference you can make. Like, that means some people can, get homes or actually have a family. Like, a lot of people don't think of it that way. They think of it like, oh, I can execute this and I'm going to be able to, generate this much revenue or this much profit. Like, I do, as a CEO, I have to think about those things, but I do think about a lot of like the human aspect of it, like how much you're actually touching people's lives.
That's incredible. To be empathetic with the other person on the receiving end is very important, and that's important as a human skill as well as a professional skill
Yeah.
in the workplace, as you mentioned. I was I wanted to ask you, for these people to provide the support system to you, they would have had to notice you, and they would have had to notice the work
Yeah.
put in. They would have had to notice the performance that you're capable of and that potential that you had within you. So, how did you put yourself out there to showcase what you were capable of to these people?
I think, if you care a lot, people notice. So I have, when I was younger, caring a lot was a bad thing, because it means that you can get hurt. People can hurt you. Um, but somehow or other, I never let that go. Like, I never wanted to stop caring or just become that person, that calloused person. And so I've cared about everything I do, about what I put into it. So I've always been probably a little OCD as far as like wanting to really strive to be my best. I, have cared a lot what, um, like, oh, if not only what I do, but how does that affect others? Because, sometimes people forget that. It's like, it's not just the work you do. If you don't do a good job, you may be like preventing somebody else from being able to do their part of the job. So I never wanted to, there was some element of me not wanting to disappoint. So it pushes me to try really hard. And I think other people had seen that. They saw how much, even if I didn't do it perfectly, how much I was willing to just like throw myself into it and with the right passion and care. And I think that's half the battle. Like, caring is like a lot. Like, it's so easy to just, like, I gotta do this, I gotta do that. And it doesn't really mean anything. I come in the morning and I check out at the end of the day like the Flintstones. And but if you really care about your job and you care about the others and you want to make it enjoyable, that's why when you're talking about like when I go into meetings or do anything, like, I try to make it fun. Like, I try to treat people as if they're my friends and family, because I'm not necessarily much different outside my life at work than I am inside, because that's what to me makes it, more enjoyable. Like, it's gonna make those things, the times where they're hard, they're gonna be easier if you have friends in the process. And when you can crack a joke or like, we're gonna blah 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 happened, but we're gonna get through this. It's easier to kind of climb that hill and sometimes mountains.
That's incredible. Let's go through some of the things that you've achieved in your life that we've seen. You have an incredible resume. Anyone that
Mhm.
sees your achievements, the things you've done, the people you've led, the teams you've led, they're awe inspiring. And I wanted to take this chance to go through those different points in your life and ask you like where you were mentally when you did those things, what drove you to achieve them, and we can even talk about the support systems that enabled you to get there and the people that were there in your life that were important in
Okay.
those moments. So you talked about going to university and the family that helped you think about pursuing computer science and pursue programming. Uh, but you mentioned in our conversation earlier that before you knew anything about technology, you wanted to become a wildlife biologist.
Yeah, forever.
So tell us a little bit about that. Like what drove your interest in wildlife and in biology, and to the point where you were passionate about it for a career.
Well, I loved animals, like, I always loved animals, and, my mom did too, and I was super passionate about horses too, like, the moment I saw a horse, I was just infatuated, and I was lucky enough that even though we were poor, we lived in an area that was more, they call it Fontucky. It was like an urban area, but yet there was still a lot of like farmland and stuff like that. And so I got to have a horse when I was young, and just when you talk about empathy, like animals have they feel so much of like um, how like what you're putting off, and they can also soothe you. And there's a equine therapy or others, like there's a reason for it, because it does kind of help you through traumatic things, because it just kind of absorbs some of your energy. And so I loved how animals were, and how like they would care about you no matter who you were, what bad day or how much money you had, or anything like that. So that made me want to preserve them. And so especially as you started to see more and more animals and species becoming extinct in our environment and stuff, I wanted to kind of be a Jane Goodall type person, where I was helping make a difference. And especially having a horse, having to learn a lot of those things and stuff. And then when I got to learn about science, I just loved it. Like, it was nice to know that you could put a formula to something, that like things made sense, because especially when your life doesn't always make sense, it's nice to know certain things make sense. And so those things really gave me comfort. And that's how I wanted to kind of apply making a difference, because at that time I didn't trust humans. I thought humans were like not great, but I thought animals were lovely.
I just got a couple guinea pigs recently, and I totally
I had them as a kid.
yeah, they've taught me a lot about empathizing with animals, and I feel so bad about some of the ways we've come in terms of industries, that the way they
Yeah,
treat like animals as food products, or um, they're just
I
not
need to be
treated
better. I
very
was
humanly.
vegetarian for a few years, and then no, and then I came to California, and I went to In-N-Out Burger, and so Oh,
But I totally understand where you're coming from when you say, like, when you have animals around you and when you spend time with them, you truly build a sense of empathy for them.
yeah.
You see them in a different light. You don't see them as resources or foreign living beings. You see them as some people you can build relationships with, or not people, but like organisms you can build relationships with.
When I
Uh,
would have a hard day, I would always went back to the stables, and, like, if I was crying or I was upset as a kid, I'd go back, and my horse, even though he was a wild thing, he would come and he would just rest his head on my shoulder, and he would, like, nibble and give me little kisses, and he would just sit there until he knew that I didn't need it anymore. And I thought it was, like, the best thing in the world, you know?
Incredible.
Mm.
I can't even imagine the feeling. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
I mean, a lot of times people just I mean, you think about it, like, people wanna be comforted in some way and know that it's gonna be okay, and, if people can do it, but so can animals.
That's incredible. Yeah. I wanted to ask, if you had the chance of pursuing wildlife biology, and if you weren't in the tech industry, what would your life be like today? Where would you be living, and what would you be pursuing?
Yeah, that is a question. I do think about that, like, what would it be like? I definitely probably wouldn't be, with a bunch of makeup and a blazer and wearing jewelry. When I was a teenager, like, I was more, a granola, if you were. Like, I just wore T-shirts and jeans, and I hadn't worn my hair in a ponytail. I didn't wear makeup. I was more, I don't know, uh, tough and rumbly, I guess. But I think, I think it probably would, be a lot more, uh, reserved in my less. Like, when you get into the point of um, building your career, and tech industry is like there's just a lot of things. It's not just uh, it's a lot of new services, a lot of new people. It's moving fast. It's uh, competitive. I think in wildlife biology or things move a lot slower. Anything in that kind of science moves a lot slower. Things take a lot more time. You need to have a lot more patience. You need to give up a lot more, like because it's not the most high paying jobs in the world. You're doing it for you're giving for a reason. And I do have some regret of that. Of like, I look at my life now with like, I'm like, oh, I got so much stuff. Like if I were, I'm like, I want to have all these things, and I probably wouldn't need all these things. But I don't think there was also anything wrong with it. I think there's a lot of like, we love our gadgets and we love our stuff, but I do think that it's good to kind of recognize that and recognize the nature part of things, and be a little bit more mindful of it. And I do try to take account of that every now and then, of like how much am I over here versus where I would have been. Um, but yeah, I don't know
Would you
if I
say
answered the
that
question.
grounds
I think
you a
I'd be
little?
less. I'd be a lot less.
Well, what would you say are things that you learned from that part of your life that still guide you? I'd say empathy would definitely be one of
Yeah,
them.
I think empathy, and it's helped me a lot on my career of when those things happen, like a number of challenges along the way. I had to learn quickly, like, what is a path to solution? Like, what resources do I have? What ability do I have to kind of get myself out, or whatever it happened to be? But I was never willing to accept that this is the way. Like, oh, I just going to have to be in this situation, or because this happened to me, this is what everybody else does. I'm like, I was constantly trying to find a way to what I wanted my end goal to be, and so it made me very uh, I don't know, like I just had to be kind of scrappy about things. And some of it is intuition, some of it is just, looking at what you have and being the most efficient as possible, and just trying to drive, which it sounds funny because it's like project management, drive to that critical path to what's going to be a solution. So I think my constant wanting to find a way, fix things, make things better, not saying yes to something that people always tell me that is what you have to do. I find my own unique ways that I think is looking at the situation and looking at the people, the resources, otherwise, and making a creative solution out of that, versus, oh, an MBA program told you need to do these things this way. And like, because every situation is different. And I think having those kind of, I guess, street smarts a little bit on the way I apply my business solutions or anything else has really gave me those are the tools I use for my success, I guess. And I think it's a bit different than what other people do, because a lot of times it's based on a lot of foundational things they've learned from school or otherwise. And there's nothing wrong with that. And some of this, it's the same stuff, but I just don't take it as there's only 3, 4 ways that things are done. I look at every situation as unique.
So, would you say that some of the experiences that you've had, since they came from real life experiences, not designed for a classroom,
Mhm.
uh, they've they helped you learn these skill sets with more nuance and more personalization than if it was
Yeah,
some
yeah.
framework that was just built for a course that you learned to check mark like a credit on your through your university career. So would you say that your experience with wildlife biology would have been different if you'd pursued it as if you'd pursued education in that field?
Yeah, because you have to, there, like science, there is a lot of, it's like the difference between cooking and baking, you know? Like, I'm probably more cooking in my career versus science. If I was a wildlife biologist, I'd be more baking.
Right.
But I think there's also an element of like when you're doing that, like if you look at and have seen any of the documentaries on like on Jane Goodall, like she was watching and learning, and there was a lot of things written already, but based on what she saw in her experiences, she was, coming to her own deductions of like how the monkeys and everything lived and what their habits were, and because there was like, oh, they don't, there was a lot of preconceived notions of what primates were capable, and what feelings they had, and what notions of family and stuff like that. And so she wrote that and made a new perspective on that. So I do think there's an element of being able to use your own views and design, like ability to see those design patterns versus people who told you what the design patterns are. And so, but yeah, I'm probably cooking a little bit more.
So what led you towards tech? How did your transition happen from wildlife biology to technology?
Yeah, it's what you said in the intro. I always knew I had to do really well in school to get a degree or to get into college, and I was doing that. I was in the GATE program. I had, always had somewhere between a 3.9 and a 4.0 GPO. And then when my mom left me, I it was a shock, and I took a dip down. And when I became that alter personality of like rebellious, but outgoing version of myself, I also let some of my education go because it's hard to do everything and work and kind of just absorb all of that. So ended up taking a dip, and I was like 1 point off from being able to get into the college that I wanted. So the last year I took the dip, and then by the end of the year I kind of like shook myself off, and I'm like, I'm not doing myself any good by being this way. And I got my GPA back up, but yeah, I was a little short. And that's when the history teacher, because I was his favorite, and he was the one who told me to go to that computer programming class. And then he told me like, Ginger, you can do this. I think you actually would do well. And there's a lot of jobs because obviously, at that time in the 90s, it was starting to boom and everything. And so I was like, I saw what people could make, and I'm like, all right, let's do this. Why the heck not? And I left. That's when I saved the money, and that family helped me apply for college. And then I got on a plane and came back to California and went to school.
Very nice, very nice. And how would you say that your life would have been different today, or your career choice would have been different today had those difficult moments not have transpired in your life?
Oh, 100%. I feel like I have a few where there was an if or that, this could have happened or that could have happened. And like one of the times when I was still trying to like find play, like when I first got left in Utah, I would like stay at different people's houses and kind of just hopped around, or I tried to rent rooms and things like that. And I was trying to rent a room from a family's house, and I didn't quite have the money. And I did an interview, and it was like $50 a month to rent this room, but I didn't have it. I was kind of short at the time, and they told me no. And I went back to my car, and I was just crying. I was like, what am I going to do? I'm going to have to like, and I lived in my car like here and there, but I'm like, oh, I'm going to, have to do this for whatever period of time. And they came back out, and they're like, we're going to give it a chance. Like, we're not sure, but we're going to just give you a chance and come on in. And they're the ones who let me stay. They were the ones who got me into the college class. They were the ones who helped me get into high school in that area. And then I graduated, and that's when I got my grades back up. So when they gave me that help, and they saw something in me and gave me a chance, I took it, and I started to turn my life around. And before then, I was kind of starting to go down the other direction. And it was that family that made a big difference. And then that other family, when I was trying to save for college, like I could have not went to college, and they pushed me to do so. And I've had a few of those, and just even, how I became a business owner. It was that person who he gave me a job, and I never did it before. I never had been a program manager of a software development project for a consulting company, never done any of those things. But I did I'm like, well, I'm just going to pretend like I'm that person. And I'm going to do it because I got into that survival mode of like, I have no other choice. Like I was in a lot of debt at the time because it was the recession. And I was like, if I don't do this, then I don't know what's going to happen. So I just kind of got in that mode. And I did really well and he saw something in me. And then he's the one who's like, I'm going to train you. I'm going to show you everything I know. And because I think you can do it and you can be somebody. And then I did it and I did all the things that he expected and more. And he, then made me his business partner. And then later on, we started our own, we co-founded with another, couple of partners, and that changed the course of my life.
That's incredible. Are you still in touch with these families who were part of your childhood?
The family that helped me go to college, I am. So the other family I have lost touch with, but yeah, that family still sends me Christmas cards every and birthday cards. I wish I was as good as sending them back, but I still say hi and keep in touch with them. They're an amazing family.
That's incredible. It must be very gratifying, and they must be so proud of you to see where you've come today.
Yeah, and quite frankly, I don't even know if they know that, like, where like what I've accomplished now. We don't necessarily talk about. They're just like, "Hey, Ginger, how are you?" But I don't talk about my successes.
I hope they listen to this podcast and then they'll get a little.
Yeah, it'd be kind of funny. Like I never asked them or thought about that.
No, that's incredible. Thank you so much for diving into your personal life and for telling us about these tough things that people have uh, a challenge maybe talking about in public on a forum like this. And so thank you. That we really appreciate it. I wanted to divert this conversation towards your life today, or
Yeah.
maybe further into your career once you'd already achieved a management level position, you were handling a team and you were guiding them to achieve big things like engineering, or like when you were leading your own company. So tell me a little bit about, actually tell me, what was the first team you ever managed, and what was your management style back then, and like how has that evolved since then?
Well, the first team I ever managed was that team that I got, that I was telling you about, that I had to fake it kind of till I make it. Like that the company was only a couple people, and they basically got this huge deal, and it was with a really big name, and they're like, "All right, we sold something that we don't have," and they hired me to build out the team and to run the team, and I had to hire a bunch of people, and then I had to quickly, because we were behind, because we were supposed to have already had the team, like essentially get to the point where we can have demos and stuff. And so it was very stressful, and the customer was a tough critic, demanded a lot and changed his mind a lot.
That's
Um,
all.
is- so it was a lot of therapy sessions. It was a lot of the empathy thing was like I had to use that right away because I had to be supportive. I also, even though I wasn't necessarily doing the coding, like I stuck there with them like long nights or otherwise. I would be the one testing and helping them, and just kind of make sure that we were in this together, and then knowing when it was too much to kind of let off, and when I needed to push on the customer more. So it really taught me diplomacy, empathy, and the human side right away, because like these people were giving, because they also, it was a tough economy at that time. So everybody really cared about keeping a job and, making money and stuff like that. And so I wanted them to be successful also, and I knew how much pressure they had, but that pressure can really like just, feel like it's gonna crush you. So it's important to balance that so people don't feel like they're holding it all on their own, and you're load balancing amongst the team, So I think I learned and I still try to do that now. Like you should never, no matter what level you're at, be unwilling to get your hands dirty, and to like everybody should be willing to pick up pieces, do things and stuff like that. Don't just put it on one person just because they're the primary person who could do it. See how you can help. That means a lot to folks when, because otherwise, yeah, I've seen people where they can really crack under the pressure, because when you, especially in consulting, like, you want to do a good job. It's you're selling you and your service. So it can be tough at times. It can be challenging.
How did you find your place in that when you first started consulting? like when you start a new role like this, sometimes there's a break-in period, right? Like where you feel
Mhm.
like, am I the right person for this role? Or if you've never had the experience of doing this, like this exact moment where I've never done a podcast before,
Yeah.
right before we started, I was asking myself, am I the right person for this role?
Hey,
But
you're
then,
doing great. Yeah.
but I imagine you probably had those moments in your life as well, when you and
All the time. You know?
so how did you deal with those moments?
So dealing with those moments, there's a little bit of you need to believe that you're going to get there, and you're like, all right, I don't have all the answers now, but I'm sure they'll come to me, and I have faith in my abilities that I can bridge the gaps. And I do think it makes a huge difference if you have a team or you have a support system that believe in the same. And so if they, even if they don't know the answers, if they all believe like, you know what, we're going to find the answers and we're going to do it together. So I always tell people like, we're going to all fall. We're not going to do everything perfectly, but it's really about your ability to, rather than, kick them or, put dirt on them, like pick the person up, dust them off, and like, we got this, and you keep moving. And I think if you have that security of knowing you have a group around you who can do that, you have more confidence to like try and to fail. And I think in particular, like I've had to do that so much in my life, and I've had things be there for a second and then be gone the next. I I'm not so afraid to, to go dive in, because like you never know when something's going to be there and when your whole life can change. So why are you not going to, live every opportunity you have? Like I have you heard the song the Shakira song Try Everything?
Yes.
I love that song. It's like, because it's all about that, like, you may, try and fail and stuff like that, but I'm gonna try everything. I'm gonna, like, soak up every moment. I'm gonna do everything, and I think having that kind of mentality and knowing that you have people around you support and wanna do the same, you can do so much. It's crazy, like, what just that kind of, uh, support system can do for you.
And was this mindset and this support system what drove you to wanting to pursue like a founding venture like Sturdy Networks?
Um, so I didn't wanna actually do it because, at the time, I was still, like, I was so conservative of, like, and it wasn't even very much money, and I'm like, "Ooh." I'm like, "I don't wanna, I was, like, storing pennies, like, when you don't have money and then you have money, you're like, "I wanna be very careful with all of it." Um, but they told me to have a leap of faith, and so they were the ones who kinda carried me forward and like, "Ginger, we got this, we can do this." And I'm like, all right." And then when we started getting, momentum and I saw the possibilities, then I started being the one, I'm like, "Dude, we could do way more than what you guys are even thinking." I'm like, "We're not thinking big enough, like, we need to, like, go at this." And we started to shift our priorities of, like, the way, because we had, 3 businesses at the time. We had a UI UX business, we had a software development business, and then we had the, cloud consulting, side. And the UI UX was starting to become a flooded market. It was, and that my business partner was really starting to kind of, get into this retirement mode, so he wasn't putting as much time into it. So we started shifting over, and I'm like, "All right, let's restructure our organization to where we are gonna be more efficient and more effective, and put more eggs in the basket of this business that was very tiny in comparison to the rest of our businesses." But I'm like, it has the most possibility. And we did. And 1 year later, we got acquired.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, congratulations on like going through that, but also having the foresightedness, even when it was when it was just growing, when it was in its early growth stages, to see what it could have
Well, I
become.
didn't, but that's the point. Like, I didn't, but somebody else saw it for me. And then
Right.
later on, I saw that like it could be more. So this is to me like that team effort. So even though you may not see something at the time, like, but other person could believe for you, and then you, hopefully you don't want that to only be a single person. Like if you're in a team environment, you need to shift those kind of rules and days around, because we all have our good and bad days. And so you hope that the time that you're all down, that's not good. You hope you have a cheerleader and an inspiring person for the times that you're feeling a bit low, or, not necessarily having the same vision and faith as others.
I totally agree. I think I can relate to this from the point of view of working out, right? Like sometimes we go to the gym and we're trying to do a set and it might be too heavy, like the weight might be too much, or you've never done it before and you get in your own mind like saying, I don't think I can
You're
do
like,
this.
"Yeah, I'm just gonna take the easy button."
There'd be like you're a friend or your hype man and you can piggyback off of their confidence, and then the risk of failure
Yeah,
just doesn't seem as mighty, right? No, that's
yes, yes.
incredible. What would you say were some of your biggest challenges when your role shifted from a management role but still as an employee to now running a company and being responsible for people?
I think, and this is a hard time when you become a leader. It's, if you were a really good doer, like, you're a very successful at like, I know how to get things done. I know how to do that job. People see me and admire me in that job and role. When you start becoming a leader, you start shifting those things to other people. It's not about you, it's about them. And sometimes that transition can be hard for people because they're used to being um, the person saving or the person doing all those things, and when they see they're like, well, I can just do it faster, and so they end up doing themselves, but like, you're not teaching anybody, you're not doing anything, you're not leading. And that's the important part as you kind of shift over to a leader, that it becomes more of a public service job. It's not you and your accomplishments. It's about their accomplishments, and you're the person who's advocating and elevating them to be the best they can be, and then you all succeed together. So you kind of change this role and the skill sets to more of, how can I help them? How can I unblock them? How can I make them be the best they can be?
Wow. And how did you do this for so many people? Like your study networks or other places where you've uh, led people before, like Onika or like here at Caylent.
Well, you don't start with, like, hundreds of people. I mean, you start with a few people, and then you do it, and then, that becomes bigger and bigger, um, and then, once you learn the tools and the ways, like, a few people, 50 people, 100 people, 500, like, it doesn't become that much different, and you don't see, like, there are, they kinda, they say these S curves and stuff like that of organizational growth, and so there are, like, levels of maturity in how you shift responsibilities and how you create infrastructure. And sure, but it's like, your ability to support people and to provide development and mentorship, I don't think those things necessarily change, and they shouldn't. To me, like, I I want to give more empowerment to people, but you shouldn't be like, this is your job, or like, your problem, or your like, I still try to keep the mentality of like an us, a them versus, you. So I think that's an important thing of like, don't lose those kind of aspects. Like, I, no matter different sizes of organizations I worked at, always think of it as a family business. It's just a bigger family. Extended cousins, second, third, fourth cousins. Mm,
Well, I have extended cousins in my family, and sometimes I can't remember their names. So,
that
like,
happens.
so when your family, or in this case, a company, grows to a point where, say, you were managing 10 to 15 people before, which is still a substantial number, but you can maintain some level of direct involvement in their
Yeah, yeah.
day. But when you go from that to managing, let's say now 300 people at Kalen, like how have you thought about institutionalizing or incorporating some of these values that you have as a leader about like having empathy for the people that work for you, leading as a group collectively towards a goal instead of blaming people or holding people accountable for things? How do you make that part of a system where people with different perspectives who may not necessarily have this same mindset as you?
Yeah, so, the key is, like, it's not about cloning yourself, and you're not, it becomes way less about you. It becomes about the leaders that you hire, and I think it's not even, senior leadership as much as, team leads and directors and stuff. Like, they're the ones who are really making a difference. So it's really important to invest in them and to make sure that you are hiring and training with the same value system, and the things that have made you successful. Try to translate that, but then let them to put their own flavor on it. Like, because I think that, to me, culture and environments change with the people that come in it. So the moment in time of like where Caylent started, a year or 2 years from now, we're changing, like because all the people in it are changing. So we have to kind of take assessment all the time. But if you can let it change in a bad way, if you will, of what was, you found what made you special based on the type of leaders that you hire, I think.
Right. And so how do you make sure that they're even accounting for the differences in personalities, they all head towards a constructive and positive result for the business?
I do try to have, like, the way we in it does get harder to scale that, but, like, right now, like, the directors and even the delivery managers and stuff, like, they do have, regular meetings together, where they have, shared knowledge, thought sharing, kind of, uh, a bit of democracy of the way we kind of develop things. And same thing, as far as they get together, no matter if it's different practice leaders or not, to kind of understand, here's the way that we're thinking, here's the challenges we're facing, here's the successes that we're having, so that we can learn from each other, and then try to create the same common um, processes, policies. Insert another P. But I think it is really important that you have them working together as a team. I had joked when I came on as the delivery leader, because I had to step in. Now I have some leaders under me, and I had talked to. We just had a few directors at the time, and I referred to them as the knights of the round table. I'm like, we're all equal here. We're let's all treat and respect each other, and that we all have input on what we're going to make a difference on the delivery organization as a company. So I tried to make sure everybody does things in the same way, and even the executive team, like, we're more here to listen than to try to tell people what to do. Like a good leader will be listening more than dictating, I think.
If you were to provide advice to people that are leading other people in companies today or that aspire to become leaders, what would be the top two things you would say leaders should aspire to?
Don't forget that they're humans. It's so easy to read numbers and, like, we have 310 people at Caylent, or we have X, this, and that. Like, those are all humans behind those numbers. And I think don't forget that, and get a chance to talk to people, and hear from them directly to kind of reinforce some of your decisions versus, I'm a huge advocate of data. Like, I love data, and I think you can make smart decisions from that. But I think data along with conversations, understanding the people, basically, come together as a good decision. If you just, do one or the other, you're probably not you're gonna miss some pieces. So
Right.
I would say it's really important to talk to people, and not to forget that, it's especially when you're in consulting, that people are your product. So treat them with respect, and understand that, we're all living lives, and we're not just, Joe the architect and Ginger the da da da. Like, we're humans working together.
That's incredible. I hope people that listen to the podcast take note of that, and then they learn to treat each other like they want to be treated themselves.
Yeah,
And
and the only other thing that I would say that for me, I think is really important, is that when you're looking at challenges, opportunities, otherwise, look at them uniquely. Look at all the things, look at all the components, and the resources you have, the people that are involved, the environment, the economy, all those kind of things, and come up with a unique solution. Don't just apply the same things of, like, oh, this company did this or that company did that, or I read that. Like, I do think it makes a big difference, because like, these are living, breathing things, and together those components can either be something great, or that it can really just fall apart because you applied the wrong recipe to the situation.
so at this point in the podcast, I kind of wanted to divert the topic towards something that's very pressing, and I had the first chance to uh, hear about this on our Breaking Through the Cloud podcast, where you spoke with Connie, and it was about women in the workplace, and since you worked in the technology industry at a time when things were not so great in terms of equality and equity, and men and women having an equal platform. And so I just wanted to hear from you. What were your experiences like? What are some of the things that you went through, and what are the lessons you learned from them?
Yeah, I had said on the other, Breaking Through the Cloud that I basically, got challenges the moment I walked into the door. In college, it was a lot of challenging if I could do it, saying that I cheated and that type of thing. And then, when I got my first job, it was, a lot of questioning if I could, a lot of gossiping and that type of thing. And then I also, was told I couldn't have jobs because I was, a girl, and the first help desk job, you're like, no, it requires you to go underneath the desk, and girls wear skirts and dresses, even though I never wore a skirt to dress to work at that time. And so, it was a lot of those things, and uh, I still, luckily not so much anymore, but along the way, it was shocking how many people would say that it was due to some kind of like I slept with somebody, or this person was, flirting, or did that, even though they had no idea who I was. It was just more of I did not look the profile. Like, not only was I a woman, and why is a woman in these roles, but I didn't look like, some of the women they would see in these roles. Um, and so it was just easier for them to make those kind of assumptions. And I think, at the time it felt just hurtful, but I think later it was probably because people felt intimidated and worried about their own, place, and what did that mean, and didn't want to think that I actually just did the work and, perhaps was better than them at some of those things. So, and then also, unfortunately, women in more than when I was younger, in a very highly dominant workplace. And sometimes there was, especially when I was starting out and everything, I've been sexually harassed too, and just, put in, uncomfortable situations and stuff. And I at the time, it seemed more like this is kind of what you deal with, and as I've, got more into leadership roles and stuff, and it's like, no, you don't have to deal with that. And I'm not going to let these things happen. And I started to have the ability and the power to create an environment where that was not going to be acceptable. And so a few of my jobs where I saw um, people even talking down to other people, other, women, of like making like, you do this or you do that, or making them feel less than or stupid. I not, I become like mama bear, and I like not having that. Um, so yes, it's gotten better over time, and I think, as a leader, you get to kind of help create those environments. But I can't see everything, but I try to make sure through the programs that we have, and the education, and the types of leaders that we bring to the company, that they are, actually trying to do the opposite, and they're trying to create a safe environment where women and just diverse, folks can thrive and feel like they have a chance to have a career, and just a place that they can shine, and that it's okay.
And I would say, I would vouch for this, that at Caylent, every person I've worked with, I think they have that sense of empathy that if you have
Yeah.
that, that alone would help you avoid behaving like this, or the behaviors that you faced from other people. And would you say that this is something you've noticed across the industry, or just in the world as in general? Have we gone towards a place of having greater empathy for each other?
Um, I like to think so. I mean, I've got to work in a few different environments where it was like a company that was mine, and so I got to set those things, and then we got acquired, and then you're seeing different, mix of things, and then, becoming part of a large company where there's pockets of probably things that are fantastic, and other pockets that you're like you have an entirely different experience in. So I think it's been, as we see more, and I don't mean to be stereotypical, but I do think as we've seen more women leadership, the style does kind of drive from more empathy. And I think there's a lot of male leaders that have a lot of empathy in them. And I think it makes them feel more comfortable in accepting that, like, I can be this way too. Like, I want to be this type of leader, but I always thought that you're supposed to be like this in order to be successful, just like we have. And so what I have found is a lot of male leaders that I work with, I think they feel more comfortable and are actually, digging into more empathetic leadership because they feel comfortable themselves. So, so it's not just women, it's also men feeling in a safe environment that they have the ability to lead the way they feel comfortable too.
And I feel like you yourself are a powerful person and you're a courageous person. You you uh, you you dealt with these challenges in a way that's unique to you. Like a lot of people would find these to be circumstances they couldn't handle. Like the pressure would be too much, or
I don't think so. Yeah, I always, 'cause that's why I think I probably awkwardly giggle every time you say something like that because I don't think of myself that way. I think of myself, I'm just a person. I'm Ginger, and I don't try to think of myself of any better, any worse than anybody else. I think most of the time we get so stuck on titles or accomplishments that make you feel like you're willing or able to do things where like that's not true. There's you don't know what you're capable of until you're put in a situation that you have to actually do it. Like I didn't know I was capable of a lot of those things, and it was when I had to do it, and there was times where I was like, oh, I'm gonna break, like I just can't do anymore, and then and then I'm like, oh well, I guess I'm not, so I better just get up and do it. And so I think a number of us, have that in us and we, don't know. And I think we have it in us even more if other people believe that we can. They're like, you can do this, and I am here to help you if you're having a hard day or otherwise. And um, that makes it, easier. So then next time you're that person for somebody else.
incredible. During our research, when we were preparing to do this podcast with you, Cynthia, our producer, she found that one of your favorite authors is Tamora Pierce.
Yes. Yeah.
And in her book, The Song of the Lions, Alana, the main character, she disguises herself as a boy to
Hmm.
train for knighthood. And so like she struggles with fitting in because her identity is different than everyone else in that environment, and her gender.
Yeah.
Um, and so she has to hide her true self, right? Did you feel that this was something you had to do through that period? Uh,
Yeah, I definitely did, and I probably when I was reading it, like, it like, touched me so much as, like, understanding that whole, like, feeling like you have to be somebody else in order to be, successful and to, like, show that you have these capabilities or these, hers was like she has these powers and, but people can't know as a female that she has them, and so she has to do it through a different identity, and I did that a few times in my, career, and so I always thought it was, so inspiring and it helped me like, yes, you could do that. And eventually she showed herself, right? She showed, who she was and it was okay. But yeah, I think a lot of people do that. I think a lot of people, especially when you're young, you don't have that, we kind of all start out, especially as a teenager, you're so insecure, like you're just awkward. You don't know what, is good or bad or otherwise. And so it's really easy to be influenced, and it's really easy to play the shame game, like to really just push yourself down, without even, and because sometimes you want to do it first before others do because it hurts less. And so I think that this kind of armor, this different character, puts you where like, well, you're not hurting Ginger, you're hurting this other person. And yeah, and hopefully you can shed that, like it is like, yes, it was a technique I used to survive. Would I say that people should do that? No, I hope we can create a safe enough environment where people don't feel like they have to wear that armor.
Absolutely. And I feel like at Caylent, yourself, Val, the people that are part of Caylent Collective, everyone's got this mandate on their mind that we need to achieve this. We need to achieve a company, but also an environment and an industry where we have this, and that's very admirable. What would you say? What would you say to women today that are just starting out and they want to do wildlife biology, but they see that they make more money in tech, so they want to get into tech? So, what would you say to them today? How should they lead themselves in this part of their journey where they're starting out, and how do they deal with modern forms of these issues that you dealt with before? Like, I feel like these issues still exist today. Maybe they're not as vocal. Maybe they're
Oh,
not
I
as
do, yeah, they definitely do, and I think, because when when people, like, even when people say, like, "Oh, women in tech," you're like, "Oh, well, are you in, sales or marketing or HR?" And it's like, yes, there are women in those too, and it doesn't mean that they aren't also, technical and capable, and then the ones that are actually doing, engineering roles, they immediately don't assume they are, and they're like, well, they're probably not that great. Like, there's still a lot of bias, with that, and I think it takes all of us to kind of, make people realize that no, these individuals are very capable and could probably even do more than what you see right now. They're just gaining their stride, and it's up to us. I'll use a horse, like, to let the horse run free, and really, see what they're capable of. So I think that it still exists. I think the more we have these conversations, the more when we come to a room, assume assume the person is amazing. Like, I think so many times people, and they look everybody up and down, and they've already profiled everybody. Like, they're already like, this person's this person's that. You never know who the CEO is in the room. Like, if you do that, like, you could be sitting right next to him, and that could be a girl, or anything else. And then you don't know their backstory. Don't assume, they got this cushy job because this and that. Like, I think people, there's so much more to people than, we're willing to even, let our minds be open to. And that's why I try to create more human dialogue and stories, because, I think it opens your mind, and it opens, the conversation, and then that also makes people feel safer to have, opinions, and to show, like, hey, I can do this, and versus, like, if I say that, what if I say the wrong thing, and therefore I'm gonna, be passed up for a job, or I'm gonna have this scarlet letter on me because, I said one thing wrong, at a time. We need to be better about that kind of thing.
Totally agree. I think that's very important for everyone listening to the podcast to absorb and to act on in their daily life too, like, and to feel more encouraged to do so. Well, thank you. I think that's as good place as any to close the podcast. I just
We
wanted
talked
to
about a
say
lot of things, Mon. We covered a lot of topics.
we did, we did, and I just want to say thank you for your patience with me in running
Oh,
through this.
stop. No, you were
Thank
fantastic. Thank you. Made me feel very comfortable. I talked a lot about, personal things and things I haven't talked about before, but I hope people, um, I was sharing because I want people to know that you can come from all walks of lives. You can have lots of different challenges and things, but different moments don't define you. The way you come in your next moment is what makes you as a human being, and your capability of dealing with your reaction to those challenges. And I really hope people also take that as their ability to help others, because it's the most, gratifying thing, I think, and you can do.
Amazing. All right, that concludes our very first episode of Cosmic Conversations. We hope you found it insightful and inspiring. Thank you so much for joining us, and once again, thank you to Ginger for being such an incredible first guest and for setting such a high standard in terms of what people can expect from Cosmic Conversations. We learned the importance of seeking and building a strong network and support system, being empathetic to others and their circumstances to truly succeed as a leader, and taking chances on others, not judging them based on limited information, because people are nuanced and almost always have more to offer once you get to know them. If you enjoy the show, please leave us a rating and a review on the platform you're listening on. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. If you have any feedback or suggestions for future episodes, we'd love to hear from you. You can reach us at podcasts@caylent.com, and you can find this email address provided in the description below. Thank you again, and we'll see you next time.